this amendment on a budget-related measure, trying to turn us back to solvency within 10 years, a budget that is looking at sanity, fiscal sanity. I appreciate Chairman Arrington putting forth what Congress has lacked to put forth so many times. But yet we have this amendment that would strike Section 415, and instead of a focus on deregulation, it seeks to expand federal efforts to fight climate change within our budget resolution and build upon the IRA. Overregulation has consistently hurt small businesses. It has strangled the growth capacity in our nation. It is the catalytic converter that's choking out the opportunity for our roaring engine, our economy, to produce what it needs to have the kind of enhancement to our GDP, in addition to cutting spending. According to the American Action Forum, since President Biden took office, his administration has published 792 final rules at a cost of $451 billion, $500 billion just by him bringing about more regulation. We are a country of regulation without representation, where unelected bureaucrats continue sitting in cubicles and enforcing their ideology upon the American people. $450 billion, this president alone, $500 billion in regulatory enhancements that's borne by the average family. And we have 400 agencies and sub-agencies staffed by these unelected bureaucrats who put forth these new regulations on the backs of our nation. This problem continues to get worse under President Biden. He spent $1.5 trillion through various decisions of using his executive action. Think of the student loan bailout. Think of the what he's done on enhancing food stamps. All absent Article 1, Section 1 that says all legislative powers be vested in the Congress. It's absent the rule of law. The burden of his expansion of government regulatory regimes is borne by small businesses, innovators, and yes, American families. This amendment seeks to replace deregulation section of our budget policy to encourage more spending on Green New Deal policies. The Inflation Reduction Act included billions of taxpayer dollars dedicated to these progressive climate provisions that President Biden and the Democrats put in place several years ago. This amendment seeks to enhance upon that. Already we have $27 billion going to the EPA that was enhanced just 2 and 3 years ago. $3 billion for climate block grants. $3.4 billion to convert federal buildings of the GSA into climate-friendly status. $2 billion to incentivize construction materials that are more climate-friendly. $3 billion for air pollution at U.S. ports. $1.5 billion for tree planting. You might know we have a $34 trillion gross national debt. $1 billion to force clean, heavy-duty vehicles forced upon the American people who can barely afford the vehicles on the road now. $3 billion for U.S. Postal Service, which is billions of dollars in debt for new electric vehicles at the displacement of affordable fossil fuel-powered engines. In the days and weeks following a flood or a wildfire, you'll constantly hear people talk about, they blame that on climate change. Even in this amendment, it references in line 2 that there are rising sea levels and warming oceans, and it says that the United Nations Climate Change Panel says that these human activities are provoking all of this. Well, I would encourage my colleagues to take a look at something I commend Representative Gary Palmer from Alabama has put together in the policy booklet. Go through and actually look at what the UN panel on climate change actually says. To quote them and not be able to go to look at the specificity of what they actually say, they talk about flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes, and drought wildfire combos. You know what they say? They said that there's no causation and effect in the United States for those things on climate change. Yet every media outlet and every talking point up here that wants to advance the Church of Nature ideology always contends the opposite of what the UN themselves in their own panel actually says. It's pretty astounding. So, look, it goes without saying, many of us are opposed to this. I encourage a no vote on this amendment. We are already fundamentally struggling with regulations. The Mercatus Center study says if we just go back to the 1980 level of regulations, there would be a $4 trillion bump to our gross domestic product. And yet this amendment seeks to add more regulations. Mr. Chairman, I would seek unanimous consent to enter the record an article titled Tax Foundation Scott Hodge Monetizing Clean Energy Tax Credits Create a Sham for Bad Policy, and then Cato Institute's document comparing the cost of IRA energy tax credits to expensing. And with that, I'd yield, Mr.